Hey mini chums, and welcome back to the Kenwood Kids Club, coming to you from my home kitchen, where today, as promised, I'm going to be showing you how to cook something savoury. It feels like absolutely ages since we cooked like a proper meal, and so I'm really excited to do this week, and I hope you'll enjoy it too. While the baking videos tend to get more people baking along with them, I will say that there's so much fun to be had when cooking savoury food or normal meals as well. And in fact, there's a lot more creative fun that you can have in your kitchen, so please do give this one a try. I've tried to make it as easy as possible. So when I originally devised this recipe, it involved kind of putting everything in a pan and cooking it in the oven, but you had to worry about certain elements being cooked all the way through and certain elements being cooked enough. And I thought, you know what, let's just strip it right back to the basics and let's just cook something really yummy, really comforting, and hopefully something that you'll all enjoy making as well. But enough preamble, shall I just tell you what we're making? In this week's episode of the Kenwood Kids Club, I'm going to be showing you how to make baked meatballs with Orzo. Now, we have actually done a meatballs recipe here in the Kids Club before, right back near the beginning in 2020, where I showed you how to make spaghetti and eyeballs, which essentially was just a Halloween-themed spaghetti and meatballs dish. And we made the meatballs from scratch in that video, so if you want to make yours from scratch, then by all means go back and check that one out. But today we are again keeping it super simple, and so I have just bought some ready-to-cook meatballs, fresh ready-to-cook meatballs from the supermarket, and I've pre-cooked them according to the instructions on the packet. Again, the reason why I've done that is just it means you don't have to worry about making sure things are cooked all the way through. When you're cooking them in your dish, you know that they are already cooked. An important food safety fact: if you are cooking with raw meat, do make sure that you do not allow any of that to come into contact with anything that will not be cooked. So it's really important to wipe down your surfaces and wash your hands with an antibacterial spray or soap to make sure that you do not allow any cross-contamination, or it can make you a bit poorly. However, once you have done that, we can get into kind of the fun, creative bit. And the first thing I want you to do is bring a pan of water to the boil. Now, we've talked before about when you're cooking pasta, it's important to use really salty water because it really brings out the flavour of the pasta. Most of the salt ends up in the water, so you're not going to be adding too much salt into the finished dish. But bear in mind, we are going to use some of the pasta water in the main dish. So I'm not going to be quite as heavy-handed as I would normally be. Maybe just a couple of generous pinches of salt going into that water. Now in there, when it comes to the boil, we're going to be cooking our Orzo. And if you've not had Orzo before, it looks like this. Now you'd be forgiven for thinking this is rice, but actually it's a type of pasta. Now Orzo is absolutely fantastic for adding to things like soups and things that add a bit of extra bulk and make them more filling. But they're also going to be absolutely brilliant in our baked meatballs with Orzo today. So I'm going to pop that to the side while I wait for the pan to come to the boil, and in the meantime we can start on the rest. Now, on a really low heat in a large pan, I'm going to add a tablespoon of olive oil, and I'm going to add a large onion. And I've actually already chopped my onion today, but don't worry, in lots of our previous videos where we are doing savoury cooking, we do some work on our knife skills, making sure that we're chopping vegetables safely. So if you fancy having a look at those first, again, head back, and I think our hidden veg pizza sauce is a good one to check out if you want to have a go at learning how to use your knife safely. But once you've finally chopped your onions, we're going to pop those into that pan with the olive oil. And again, what's really important here is keeping that heat down low, because what we want to do is sweat off our onions and cook them down so they're nice and soft. What we don't want to do is essentially fry them, because by the time we add everything else in, they'll end up burnt. And with that, I'm adding in a tablespoon, yes, a whole tablespoon of garlic puree. Now, this is a dish that will serve 4 people, so that garlic puree will be going across the whole dish. But if you're not a huge fan of garlic, then do feel free to reduce that slightly. If you're not using puree and you're using fresh garlic, you want to be using kind of 2 reasonably decent sized cloves. And again, if you want to reduce the garlic slightly, then just reduce that to 1. So I'm just giving it a quick stir to make sure everything is coated in that lovely olive oil. And then I'm going to tap off my spoon on the side so all the onion comes off and lands in the pan. And then I'm going to pop on a lid and leave that for about 8 to 10 minutes. Keep an eye on it because we don't want the onion to burn. So if it feels like it's going too brown, reduce that heat even more. But other than that, just leave it, and after about 8 to 10 minutes, you should find it is beautifully soft. Should we jump ahead so you can see? Okay, so my onions have got about 2 minutes to go, so I'm going to give them a quick stir. And hopefully, if yours are looking like mine, they're just beautifully soft, but they're not really colouring at all. So, leave them going, but also my water for my Orzo is boiling as well. So now what I'm going to do is just take that Orzo pasta, pop it in there, and give it a quick stir. Now, according to the instructions on your packet, you might have to cook this somewhere for around about 8 minutes. But what I'm going to do is cook mine for 7 minutes, because I want it to be a little bit al dente, which means it's still a little bit kind of hard in the middle, because it will continue to cook in the oven. So that is why we're going to slightly undercook it. So now I'm going to leave that running, and we'll turn our attention back to this pan, which of course has got our onion in. If you saw all that steam come off there, that's the reason why we left the lid on, because it's trapping all of that extra moisture inside the pan and keeping everything really soft and lovely. So now we can go into this pan with our meatballs. Now, as I say, these have been pre-cooked, and that just makes sure that I know that they're cooked all the way through before I add them into the dish. And that way I don't have to worry about them not being cooked through in the final baked meatball dish. So I'm just going to stir those around, and I want them to get kind of nice and evenly covered with that oniony, oily moisture that's already in there. And at this point, I'm going to go in with some additional flavourings or seasonings. So first things first, I'm going to go in with a couple of generous pinches of cracked black pepper. I'm a big fan of pepper. I've also got a teaspoon of oregano, which is a lovely flavour-filled herb that turns up a lot in kind of Italian dishes. So quite often when you're making things like pizza or pasta, you'll use oregano. I'm also going to add in some chili flakes, and I've got half a teaspoon here. You don't have to use these. They're going to kind of add a little kind of kick of heat to your tomatoey sauce, which again, if we're making like a nice warming, comforting dish, chili can be great for. But if you're not someone who likes spicy food, then feel free to leave those out. If you're someone who really likes spicy food, then feel free to add some more. But we're keeping things quite light and simple today. And then in here, I'm going to go in with some passata. And passata is basically pureed tomatoes. I've just got a carton from the supermarket, and this one's actually got extra herbs in as well. But you can just use plain passata. And then to really punch up that tomatoey flavour, I'm also going to add some tomato puree. So we used garlic puree earlier, and tomato puree is just tomatoes that again have been kind of blitzed down almost to liquid, and then they get cooked so that lots and lots of the extra water comes out of them, just leaving a really intense tomatoey flavour. It's great to add to anything that you're making that's got tomato as its base, because it's just going to make sure that that tomato flavour doesn't get lost amongst all the other ingredients. So now I'm just going to stir everything around one more time, and then we're going to leave this until our pasta is cooked. Now you'll notice I haven't added any salt to this pan at all, and that's because, don't forget, we're going to use some of the water from this pan to make our sauce a little bit thinner, and that's already got salt in it. So I'm not going to put any extra salt in this one. I'm hoping that all the salt I need will come from that one. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so my Orzo has pre-cooked, and all I've done is just put it through a metal sieve into a bowl so that I've caught all of that pasta water underneath. Then I can just tip this straight into the pan with the meatballs, and then I want about 150 millilitres of this water to go in there as well. Now you might want to get an adult to do this bit for you, because this is very hot, of course. It was just boiling, and I don't want any of you to burn yourself. So get your adult to grab just like a cup measure, or even pour straight from the bowl. But you want about somewhere between 100 and 150 ml of your pasta water. Now, as I've already explained, that's going to add in that kind of extra saltiness we need, but it's also going to add in some extra liquid, and the starch from the pasta is going to add a really nice kind of silkiness to your sauce. If you're somebody who eats a lot of pasta and you make your own sauces, I highly recommend always just popping in a little bit of that pasta water, because it really does just make your sauces even more delicious. But then once you get to this stage, in there we've now got our onion, our meatballs, we've got our tomato passata, our tomato puree, we've got some oregano, we've got some chili, we've got pepper, we've got that pasta water, and now we're ready to pop it into our oven dish or our roasting tin. So again, you might need to get an adult to do this bit for you, but you just need to very carefully pour that in. And I say very carefully, and I've already managed to splash myself. So that's why it's important to get an adult to help. Because again, this is very, very hot. And then I'm just going to spread my meatballs out so they're kind of reasonably evenly distributed. That way, when you're serving it later, it makes it easier for everyone to get the same number of meatballs. We don't want to cause any arguments, do we? And then the last thing we're going to do is take some feta cheese. Now, feta cheese is a Greek cheese and it is really flavoursome, and what's great about it is it crumbles down really easily. So I crumbled mine into this bowl, and then I'm just going to take it and sprinkle it over the top of the whole dish. Just going to add a tiny bit more black pepper on the top. It will add some extra flavour, but also it looks quite cool as well. And then this needs to go into a preheated oven at 190 degrees, which is 170 degrees fan or gas mark 5, for around about 20 minutes. What you're looking for it to do is that liquid will have reduced slightly, so it will be less runny, and you'll see it starting to colour up around the edges. Once it's done that, you can take it out, and then if we come back together, we can have a look at how it should look. So I'm going to go and put mine in the oven, and I will see you in a second. And after only 20 minutes, this is what you end up with. Doesn't that look absolutely delicious? And I can tell you what, it smells amazing as well. Now, one of the things I absolutely love about this dish in particular is it's the sort of thing that you can kind of cook up all of the elements in advance, so you can get everything in that pan ready to go, and then just cover it with cling film, pop it in the fridge, and then when you come home from school, you can just pop it in the oven for around about 20 minutes, and you've got dinner for the whole family with minimal effort at all. Oh, and by the way, if you want to pop it under the grill for 2 to 3 minutes just to kind of crisp off the top of that feta as well, then by all means give that a try too. Now, the last thing I like to do just to finish things off is grab some basil, and I have to say my basil's looking a bit sorry for itself. I think I need to water my basil plant. But just grab some fresh basil leaves, and I always say this, but try and go for the kind of the medium-sized ones, because that's where the real pops of flavour are. And then just sprinkle those over the top, and they add some much needed colour to this dish, and they'll make it taste even more yum. And then once you've left it to stand for just a couple of minutes, which will help everything kind of bind together so it's not quite so sloppy when you serve it, grab your bowls, grab a large spoon, and then literally just scoop up some of that yummy, tomatoey, cheesy goodness, making sure everyone gets the same amount of meatballs, of course, otherwise there'll be arguments. And doesn't that look absolutely heavenly? And once again, I've made a mess. But there you go, that is how to make my baked meatballs with Orzo. Now, if you fancy giving this one a go, don't forget you can head to the Kenwood Kids Club website, which is linked down in the video description, and there you'll find the full ingredients list and the recipe so that you can make this at home. And as always, do feel free to make any kind of changes that you fancy to make it even more perfect for you. If you're not a fan of feta cheese, then try topping it with a really mature cheddar. And I actually made this with vegetarian meatballs earlier this week, and it came out just as beautifully and just as yummy as well. So if you're someone who doesn't eat meat or is trying to eat less meat, then by all means give it a try with veggie meatballs instead. Now, I did promise that I would announce the winner of January's Star Baker in this week's video, and I am delighted to pop an image of their winning bake up on the screen for you to see now. I think you'll all agree they did an absolutely fantastic job, and if you would like to join them in the ranks of our Star Baker prize winners, then all you need to do is have a go at this week's recipe, or in fact any of the recipes over in the Kenwood Kids Club website, and then share the results of your bake or make over with us there too. If you haven't already signed up, it's really easy to do. So head to the link down in the video description, click on the button to join, and then fill in your information with your adult's permission, of course. As soon as you sign up, you will be sent out your own membership card, which is also a magnet, so you can pop it on the fridge. And then you are welcome to enter our competition as many times as you like, sharing all of the amazing things that you've been cooking and baking at home. Every month, the Kenwood team and I choose one of our favourite bakes, and they win our Star Baker of the Month prize, scooping themselves their very own Kenwood Kids Club goodie bag and their very own Kenwood mixer as well. It really is an amazing prize, and if you're someone who's really getting into being creative in the kitchen, then definitely something you'll want to get your hands on. If you'd like to see exactly what you get, then do check out my video from a couple of weeks ago, because I actually took you through one of the goodie bags so that you could see everything. But again, if you would like to be announced as our Star Baker of the Month for this month, February, just have a go at my baked meatballs with Orzo or any of our other recipes, share the results with us over on the Kenwood Kids Club website, and who knows, it could be your name that I am announcing this time next month. Now next week will be the return of one of our amazing junior ambassadors with a fantastic recipe that they have developed just to share with you. So do make sure you tune in at 4 o'clock on Thursday, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time when I'll be back with another recipe video of my own. But until then, as always, take care and happy baking.